Today I'm talking about the Jomon society and what is so special about the Jomon. And this sentence is written in an email from Thomas Curry inviting me to participate in this talk. And he said that there are several aspects of the Jomon that are very interesting and which go against the classic picture of hunter-gatherer societies. But as these are not necessarily appreciated as much as they should be outside of Japan. And he pointed out these four features. The first is elaborate pottery. Second is lack of evidence of warfare. The third is food cultivation, and finally, social complexity. And today I'm just going to do what Thomas Curry told me to do. It's a general kind of overview of the Jomon society. Please forgive me if my presentation is a bit unfocused and it could go very different directions, but I hope that you can get some interesting information or points from my talk. Then what is the classic picture of hunter-gatherer societies? Well, as you know, there are many variations among hunter-gatherer societies, but typically they are said that they lead nomadic life and they have very simple material culture. They usually don't have pottery. And their population density is kept low, and they're basically egalitarian. And in contrast to that, Jomon culture is known to be rather sedentary, and they have rich and abundant material culture, and they have high population density, and they are very complex hunter-gatherers, sort of trans-egalitarian societies. So when did the Jomon period started? This is a diagram showing the past climatic change reconstructed from the Greenland ice core, and with the proportion of vegetation change. And the Jomon period starts here. And in Japanese archaeology, Jomon period is defined as the hunter-gatherers with pottery. So the Jomon period started when first pottery emerged. And it is now believed to be about 16,000 years ago. In East Asia, pottery appeared very first during the last glacial period. So hunter-gatherers invented pottery. And then Jomon period lasted until the introduction of wet rice cultivation. That's the start of Yayoi period. And when Yayoi period started is in a very hot discussion. And but it's somewhere around 10th century BC to 8th century BC, I think. So Jomon period lasted for about 13,000 years. It's a very long period. So we subdivide Jomon period into incipient, initial, early, middle, late, and final. And although we say a Jomon period, but the first part of the Jomon period is a bit different from the later part of the Jomon period, because as you can see here, the incipient Jomon period is still in the last glacial period. So the climate was very cold, So the lifestyle of the incipient Jomon people were mostly the same with the Paleolithic hunter-gatherers. There is not much archaeological evidence of sedentary settlements. And there are pottery, but the amount is very limited. And the so-called Jomon-like features such as sedentary settlements and very elaborated pottery and active use of vegetable foods. They developed when the warming climate started in the initial Jomon period. And it developed into the middle Jomon period. And I think you know where the Japanese archipelago is, but it's at the east of the Eurasian continent. And this is the main part of the Japanese archipelago. And I mainly talk about the regional differences of the Jomon societies between Eastern Japan and Western Japan. Eastern Japan and Western Japan had a very different trajectories during the Jomon period. And here is the chronology of Jomon period. Here you can see that the incipient Jomon started about 16,000 years ago. And during the middle Jomon period, the sedentary lifestyle and the rich material culture kind of peaked. And here is the Jomon population estimates done by Shuzo Koyama almost 40 years ago. So it's a very classic study. And these population, it was calculated based on the number of archaeological sites. So the numbers cannot be taken as correct, but here you can see how the number of archaeological sites, Jomon sites, many in Eastern Japan, and there are very compared to the Eastern Japan, much fewer archaeological sites have been found in Western Japan. And here you can also see that the population increased from the initial to early to the middle Jomon period. But then it started to decrease in the late and final Jomon period. So there was a very big change at the end of the middle Jomon period when many sedentary settlements were abandoned. And we consider that people abandoned their settlement and started to live in smaller, more mobile groups. But at the same time, if you look at this Western Japan, the population level remained very low until the middle Jomon period, but it started increase from the late Jomon period. And many cultural elements which originated in Eastern Jomon culture started to be seen in Western Japan from the end of the middle Jomon period. So we can think that some people migrated with their cultural items and knowledges from the Eastern Japan to Western Japan. So there was a very big, transitional period at the end of the Middle Jomon period. And although the Jomon pottery is known to be very decorative with very elaborate, decoration, but earlier pottery was, rather simple. These are incipient and initial Jomon pottery, and most of them are covered with, repeated very patterns, and they are similar to baskets made of, vegetable fibers. So we can consider that the invention at the early stage of Jomon pottery, there was a very close relationship between baskets and pottery. But the Jomon pottery style developed into this very kind of, three-dimensional dynamic decoration from the early Jomon period. So this change occurred when the climate became warmer and people started to live in a more sedentary settlements. And here you can see the shell-like decorations, a lot of shell-like decorations are attached to the surface of pottery. And many Middle Jomon pottery, especially from the Chubu region and Kanto region, decorated with this sometimes anthropomorphic or animal-like features. But they rarely represent, natural images. It is very difficult to understand what is represented, but you can kind of sense that some sort of life or animals or creatures are represented on pottery. And although Jomon pottery styles are very, diverse according to the regions and periods, but a very specific feature of the Jomon pottery is that many of them have very, a wavy rim shape. And in East Asia, pottery was invented and developed basically as a cooking pot. So they are kind of, they are not just, beautiful, decorations, art, craft to be, put in the scene, but they were made to be used. But with these very heavy decorations and wavy rims, it is not good for actual use. But German people didn't care much about the, easier use. And on some pottery, you can see more kind of easy to understand features. And here you can see a kind of anthropomorphic figure attached to the body. But here you can see the face of this creature, but this is the hip of this creature. So it's kind of face and body facing on different ways. And here you can see the back of some human-like creature holding this pottery. The Jomon pottery crafting is not like drawing a picture on surface of pottery. In that case, pottery is pottery, and you put some image or symbols onto it. But the creation of Jomon pottery is different from that kind of technology. It's more like the decoration and the pottery itself is, fused into one. And here you can see the snake-like decorations attached on top. And this is considered to be a kind of ceremonial lamp. But this looks like a human head or face. And Jomon decorations can invoke many different images. It's not straightforward, but you can have many different understandings or images stimulated by this, forms. And this is another example of this Jomon pottery, representation. Here you can see two faces. One is on the rim, and the other is on the body. And this has been interpreted as showing the birth of a baby from a mother. And here the pottery itself is the body of mother, and the child is, coming out from it. And this is the backside of the same pottery. And the backside of this face is represented like this. And this may look like just a decoration, but this can also be seen as a sort of face with eyes. It's kind of it's filled with ambiguity, and you can get many different inspirations. And as represented by this pottery, Jomon pottery is kind of very, it's like a living thing. Clay is not, living stuff, but Jomon people used clay to make the thing pottery, but it's not just a tool to be used, but it's a part of their, material world, constructing the world filled with many kind of lives. And this is an exhibition at the National Museum of Japanese History in Chiba Prefecture. And this shows the variation of Jomon pottery in the Middle Jomon period. And you can see that there are a lot of difference. And these very elaborately decorated ones are from these are from this area, and these are from this Tube Central area and Kanto area. And these are the regions which had a very high population density, and there were a lot of large sedentary settlements. And on the other hand, as I mentioned, in Eastern Japan, large sedentary settlements were very rare until the end of the Middle Jomon period. There were, of course, many archaeological, many Jomon sites, but most of them have only a few or maybe several pit houses. So the population of one settlement really exceeded 20 or 30. So it was a very simple society. And while in Eastern Japan, there were many very large settlements with hundreds of pit houses, and which lasted for several generations. And so the level of the elaborateness of pottery seemed to correlate with the population size or population density. So this indicates that Jomon pottery was an important part of the social construction or communication technology. And the reason why the Jomon sites increased so much in Eastern Japan and it didn't develop like that in Western Japan have been discussed for a long period. And since the 1940s, it has been suggested that maybe the natural resources such as salmons or chestnuts were more abundant in Eastern Japan. So that was the reason of the development of complex Jomon societies. While in Western Japan, the evergreen forests dominated the Western Japan after the end of the last glacial period. And it has been argued that in the deciduous forests in Eastern Japan, the harvest time of acorns tend to be limited in a short period. So it required very coordination of many people. They had to concentrate on gathering a lot of acorns or chestnuts. So that labor intensive social system was more adaptive in the Eastern Jomon environment. While in Western Japan, evergreen forests, the diversity of plants were more, the plants were more diverse in evergreen forests. So the harvest time of acorns didn't concentrate in short periods. So there was no need to coordinate many people's behaviors. So that may be the reason of there was no need to gather many people at the one settlement. So so the natural environment or vegetation should have played a very important role in the development of the Jomon culture. Okay, and among the rich material culture of the Jomon society, clay figurine is another very interesting feature. As you know, the production of clay figurines are known from many early agricultural societies, including the Eastern Europe or in Mesoamerica. But in Japan, these figurines have been known from the incipient Jomon period. This is one of the few incipient Jomon figurines. This was excavated from Aidani Kumahara site, Shiga Prefecture. And as you see, it has no head, no arms, and no legs, but it has two breasts. And for early examples, this is kind of typical headless, armless, legless, just the torso with, but it has these female bodily features. And the number of incipient Jomon figurines are not many, but they are all found from settlements which had several pit houses. So we can say that the production of clay figurine is strongly correlated with the beginning of sedentary lifestyle. And the beginning of sedentary lifestyle started from the Kyushu, or this Shiga prefecture is in the western part of Japan, or Chiba, where the warming climate started earlier. So the Jomon cultural feature, started from the western Japan because it became warmer first, but from the initial and early Jomon period, when the western part of Japan was covered with evergreen forests, then the sedentary way of life kind of moved from the west to the east, and the Jomon development centered in eastern Japan. And it is very interesting that there are a lot of variation in the forms and facial features of the Jomon figurines. And this is from Hirohata Midden, Ibaraki Prefecture, belong to the latter phase of the late Jomon period. This is one of the very highly stylized Jomon figurines. But if you look closely, it still has a small kind of breast on top. So while the representation varies, femaleness seems to be, to remain the basic idea of the Jomon figurine production. And this is a kind of a schematic representation of the change in the Dogu Jomon figurine representations. These earlier examples lack face and arms and legs. And here I write many body parts here, and the figurines which have kind of all the necessary body parts appear from the middle Jomon period. And but when the population was increasing in the Chubu region, the figurines with very feminine, plump body were produced. But when the population increase stopped, or when it turned to decrease, the bodily feature of clay figurines changed from this, feminine representation to more kind of stylized things. And also the facial feature changes from rather natural representation to more kind of, unhuman-like representation. So what these clay figurines represent is another very hotly debated topics. But many people think that they don't represent, ordinary human beings, but rather represent ancestors or spirits, or those kind of symbolically important entities. And it is interesting that these symbolic entities are represented with female bodily features, even if they are highly stylized or kind of, deformed. And there are not many, but some of them have this, feline animal faces. So this is another kind of universal human cognition to, put the human feature and animal feature together. And most Jomon figurines are found broken and scattered around the settlements. So this archaeological context is similar to that in Eastern European figurines or Mesoamerican figurines. So many people have argued that maybe, but still there has been an argument whether these figurines were intentionally broken or, they just broke and scattered, because, earthen figures can be broken easily, and all the potteries were broken, probably not intentionally. So maybe, figurines are broken, but they might not be intentional. But when these in the Middle Jomon period, when figurines started to have many body parts, heads, arms, and legs, then the Jomon people started to make figurines by making each parts, and then they, put them together. So in that way, the figurines could easily be broken. And so maybe that production technique was intentionally adopted, considering that these figurines were to be broken during the ritual. And or we can also argue that Jomon people recognize that, human body is made with a number of parts. So it's a kind of, it has a composition of many different parts. So, there was an kind of ritualistic importance in breaking those parts and, put each part in different places. And this is schematic representation of the transformation of Jomon figurine representation. So as I mentioned, in earlier middle period, when the population was increasing, figurines tend to have this feminine bodily features. But when the population stopped increasing, more slender figurines started to appear. And then at the end of the Middle Jomon period, these kind of ambiguous and not human-like representation emerges. So, so this is the time when the large sedentary settlements were abandoned in Chubu and Kanto areas. So we can see a kind of correlation between the figurine representation and the social dynamics. Okay, and then I'll briefly talk about the recent findings about the level of food cultivation in the Jomon period. Well, the understanding of domestication practice during the Jomon period have progressed a lot thanks to a new research technology. It's based on the kind of replica method, putting soft silicone into the impression of the grains or seeds, and then you can examine it with SEM. So you can identify what was inside the pottery, and you can also measure the size of the seeds. And this is a graph showing that the variation of size of soybeans found from these Jomon pottery impressions. And you can see that during the initial to the early Jomon period, the size of the beans are the same with the wild beans. But during the Middle Jomon period, it started to become bigger. And during the late and final Jomon period, there were quite big, soybean seeds. So, and it has been known that these, wild species existed in Japanese archipelago, and Jomon people domesticated the beans. And that's why the size of the beans became bigger. And another interesting element in considering the domestication during the Jomon period is lacquer use and lacquer tree. Although lacquer is not a food, but lacquer tree was not didn't grow in Japanese archipelago, and it should have been brought from the continent when people migrated from the continent to the Japanese archipelago as a useful plant. And the lacquer tree grows well in warm climate, but in the climate of the Jomon period, if they left in wild natural forests, other trees would grow faster and cover over the lacquer tree. And lacquer tree needs a lot of sunshine, so they cannot grow in a natural forest in Japan. So, and the botanists say that at current Japanese Archipelago, the lacca trees only grow near human settlements. They don't grow in natural forests. So it is convincing that they were not, natural species of Japanese archipelago. And the introduction of lacca tree seems to have occurred possibly during the Paleolithic period, or at the latest, it occurred in the incipient Jomon period, because a piece of lacca tree itself have been found from the archaeological sites, and it has been carbon dated to be about 12,000 years ago. But at the time, the use of lacca as a coating material was not practiced, or we cannot find any archaeological evidence of its use as paint. The earliest evidence of the lacca use as paint or coating dates back to at least to 7,000 years ago. These are from the Kakinoshima B site, Hokkaido, found from one of the grave pits. And these are strings covered with red lacquer. So this shows a very high technology of covering each thread with red lacquer, and then they wind them into this kind of ornamental stuff. And this Kakinoshima B site, there is a carbon dating showing that it could date back to more than 9,000 years ago. But the sample that was carbon dated was not directly taken from this lacquer object, but taken from the bottom of the pit grave. So it is a kind of not sound evidence, but from the 7,000 years, lacquer technology existed during the Jomon period, and it has been one of the very important technology to produce rich material culture, because these red, shiny, glossy material, production of such red, shiny material became possible by this lacquer technology, and really expanded the realm of material culture production in the Jomon period. And Jomon people used lacquer on many ornamental items, like these wooden combs. This is from Torihama Shell Maiden, dated to around 6,000 years BP. And these are the photograph of Karimba burial. This was a collective burial of about 5 individuals. And it has, each individual had about 2 combs. And there are a variation of redness among this lacquer coating. And we can see that Jomon people had a very, good technology to control the redness by grinding the red pigment. And this is a reconstruction of the Jomon settlement based on pollen analysis. And here is a settlement, and around the settlement, there were the lacquer tree forests and chestnut forests. So we can see, we can know, thanks to the researches by paleobotanists, that these kind of anthropogenic environment emerged from the latter half of the initial Jomon period. And this was possible because the settlements was, kind of sedentary. People, was, continuously living at the same place for several generations, for hundreds of years. So people could utilize their surrounding environment. They planted useful plants around close to their settlement. So this kind of human vegetation interaction was a very important part of the German culture. So it was the basis of the soybean and azuki bean cultivation. There was very close relationship with Jomon people and the plants around their settlements. But it didn't lead to the full-fledged agriculture. These kind of half natural, half artificial environment continued for thousands of years. And this shows that in Eastern Japan, chestnuts and lacquer tree were the main, element of the artificial environment, while in Western Japan, Kirk's gilva, a kind of acorn, was the main food source. But when the German settlement, the large settlements were abandoned at the end of the Middle German period, this domesticated beans were transported to Western Japan along with other cultural elements. Okay, and I will briefly talk about the lack of evidence of warfare. This is the pelvic bone of a woman pierced with by a spatula-shaped bone tool, and this was first considered as a male bone, and he was injured in a violent fighting. But in recent re-examination of the sample, this turned to be a female, mature female bone, and this tool also doesn't look like a weapon. So this could be this could represent rather a ritualistic activity rather than warfare or violence attacks. But there are some examples, some cases showing that there was a violent attack in German period. Here you can see a stone arrowhead embedded in the bones. And this is from the Miyano Shell Mound, Iwate Prefecture. It's from the Middle German period. And this is another example of intentional violent attack. It's showing a human skull, which has two holes made by a blunt weapon, possibly stone axes. And as there are big holes and smaller holes, we can estimate that there were two weapons which caused these injuries. And this is the pattern. These represent patterns of violent aggression in the Jomon period. This was drawn by Uchino-san. She, analyzed all the reported cases of injured skeletal remains from the Jomon period, and she found that most of the cases, the attack was done from the back. So it was not, face-to-face combat, but rather kind of, sneaky attack from behind. Sometimes it was done by one person, sometimes by two or more per person. So we can clearly see that the Jomon society was not a kind of, peaceful world with no violent actions at all. But it is whether there was, coordinated large-scale violence existed is a different question. So we have to see how often this kind of attack occurred. Well, this is from our collaborative research with my colleagues. We, collected all the reported cases of Jomon skeletal remains and calculated the ratio of the injured individuals. And here you can see that this is the total number of injured individuals. And this one is the one I show you in the previous slide. It's the woman's pelvic bone pierced with the spatula-like bone tooth. So this may not represent a violent accident. Then if this is not the evidence of violent attack, there is no injured individual in early Jomon period, and we have no skeletal remains from incipient Jomon period. So this shows that we have no archaeological evidence of violence before the middle Jomon period. So although the number is not many, we can see that violent attack appeared when people started to live in sedentary settlements and the population density increased. But I don't think that there was a large-scale warfare during the Jomon period. This map shows the sites from which the injured individual have been found. And you can see that all the 23 cases are scattered in these 13 sites. So most of them have only one or two cases of injured individuals. So there is no site where a lot of people were murdered, or there is not a specific region where the rate of violence is especially high. But we have to be careful because you can see that these sites are kind of on the coastal area of the Pacific, and this doesn't mean that violence occurred on these coastal areas. This is because we have a lot of shell-midden sites on these coastal areas, because in Japan, usually the bones tend to disappear in a hundred or a couple of hundred years. because due to the acidic soil. But if the person is buried in shell middens, the bones can be preserved very well due to the calcium from the shell. So this distribution only shows the distribution of skeletal remains. So the problem is that we don't have much skeletal remains in inland areas, but there is a Kitamura site in Nagano Prefecture where there are almost 100 skeletal remains have been found. And there is not one case of injury reported on those skeletal remains, although the condition is not very good. So we cannot be too sure about whether the violence was not there or just the evidence cannot be observed on the bone in this condition. But still, the current data, I don't think that we have any archaeological indication of a severe warfare occurred in the Jomon period. And finally, a brief mention about social complexity. It's about the it's a big topic, but I will concentrate on the specifically Jomon characteristic nature of social complexity of the Jomon period, focusing on this circular settlements. This is Nishida site. And the site is called a kind of a Jomon model village because this is such a beautiful concentric structure. And at the center of the settlement, pit graves. And around the graves are buildings and houses. So it's very interesting that among most circular settlements, dead ancestors are at the center of the settlements, and they were kind of forever together with the living descendants. And these circular settlements started to appear from the early Jomon period in Kanto region, and it developed in Kanto, Chubu, and the southern part of Tohoku regions during the Middle Jomon period. And closer examination of these circular settlements show that this is not just a circle, but two sets of two groups facing each other, and there are basically a kind of dual structure among most circular settlements. And at Nishida site, the dual structure is not that obvious. But if you see at the center of the settlement, you can see two rows of burials. So maybe the group who lived in this Nishida site had a dual kind of moiety like social systems. And when these the circular settlements are a kind of very characteristic evidence of sedentary lifestyle, and we have no cases of circular settlements in Western Japan. So it is only these can only be seen among densely populated area with, former researchers show that the circular settlements distribute evenly among in southern Kanto regions. So they have been a kind of base structure, base settlements, and the utilization of the surrounding area was sort of controlled by each groups. And when these circular settlements were abandoned at the end of the Middle Jomon period, stone circle emerged in the Tohoku region. And this is Oyu stone circle. It's one of the famous examples. The Oyu stone circle shows striking similarity to the typical circular settlements. It's like the central part of the circular settlements, that the burial part were, established itself as a ritualistic site. And at Oyu stone circles, very similar stone circle. There are two stone circles are made, and these are aligned to the direction of probably the summer solstice sunset. So there are not many cases where Jomon people were conscious about the terrestrial movement, but this is one of the few examples. And maybe that was because they tried to, control the gathering time during the year. And these stone circles are a kind of composition of many small stone, alignments. And these are burial markers. So these may consist of many burials. So the basic structure is basically the same with the circular settlements, which we see in the case of Nishida site. And so one can argue that this kind of ritual is very, it should have been led by a leader, but there is not much archaeological evidence showing hierarchical structure. So I think that the Jomon social complexity is basically based on kinship, and it was not developed into the formation of hierarchical society. So is that time? Should I stop?
Getting so it's gone past 1 o'clock now. So
okay.
Are you near the end?
Oh yes, I can end here.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Fantastic, fantastic talk. Just in the interest of time, if people want to put questions in the Q&A session, we can start answering those. There's a couple of questions in there already. And one question is, what happened to the Jomon people? To what extent are they ancestral to modern Japanese population?
Yes, this is a very interesting question, and it has been very hotly debated these days. If you look at archaeological evidence, the from the Yayoi to the Kofun period, we can see that there were some migration from the continent, but we can also see that continuity from the Jomon culture into the Yayoi culture. So archaeologists tend to believe that the number of immigrants from the continent was not that much. But a recent genetic analysis showed that the modern, the Jomon people, the contribution of Jomon genes, I think it's about 10% or so, so it's not that much.
And is that, I seem to remember that there were differences in different parts of Japan, so certain areas had kind of have a larger contribution of genetic Jomon ancestry.
There's a lot of regional variability.
Yeah, interesting. So we've got another question which asks about the relationship between kind of Jomon pottery and artifacts and Shintoism, the kind of animistic religion of Japan. Are there any connections that can be drawn there?
Yes, I think the connection is not strong, but one very thin line can be drawn from the magatama beads, comma-shaped beads. The comma-shaped beads is among the Shinto, what can I say? Shinto important stuff, and comma-shaped beads originated in the Jomon period. So there is a very long continuity from the Jomon to Yayoi, and the comma-shaped beads, some of them were made from jadeite, and the utilization of jadeite to make beads was also very important in the Japanese Jomon period, and it was an important item to be in a long distance interaction in the Jomon period. But the comma-shaped beads were it continued into the Yayoi period, Kofun period, and all the way to the the Shintoism in the historical period.
Interesting. So some continuity, perhaps.
Perhaps. Yeah.
So I was struck by obviously the kind of the patterns in the pottery and in the figurines, and what it seemed to be the kind of the temporal patterns you were showing, that was kind of like a decrease in complexity of the pottery during kind of the late Jomon period, but looking at the figurines, there seemed to be almost kind of an increase in intricacy and detail in those in the figurines. So are there any explanations as to why those different aspects of material culture seem to be showing different directions in terms of?
Yes, but I think basically the design of figurine and pottery go together, I think. And in Western Japan, pottery became plainer in the late and final period. And although they started to make figurines, but the figurines in Western Japan are very plain. They didn't even have eyes and mouth. There's just no decoration mostly. But in the Tohoku regions, the pottery are not as dynamic as those from the Middle Jomon period, but they have very elaborate designs. And there you can see a very elaborately decorated figurines. So I think the relationship with pottery and figurine are very close. And when they go plain together. And when they go, elaborated, they go elaborated together, I think.
And that seems to be kind of clearly related to the population dynamics. So is there a kind of a good understanding about what's ultimately driving the population changes? Are there kind of climatic changes during this period?
Yes, it's not well known yet, but many people believes that the climatic change was the initial cause of the dynamic. But maybe we should also think about the social factors too. There are some archaeologists saying that there is a kind of tension of egalitarian society, that everything should be, shared equally. But, people want to have, things for their own. So there was a kind of social tension, and it kind of culminated during the Middle Jomon period. It led to the catastrophic destruction of the large settlements. So I think we have to look at the evidence from these different ways, but how to analyze that is a very difficult question.
I mean, does that relate to? I was thinking as you were talking there that if there was a kind of struggle there between those different social forces, how would that manifest? You kind of, because you don't see it, you're not saying there's evidence for a kind of struggle or warfare or violence. So is that the kind of evidence you would need to assess those ideas, or
Yes, I think there maybe this explanation is kind of tautological, but when we have a lot of problems, fighting is one possibility, but just say goodbye and go different ways is another good way to solve the question. So that might be what happened at the end of the Middle Jomon period. They decided to not to live together in a large group, but they thought that it was better to live in more scattered, smaller societies, and they sometimes get together at a ritualistic event, but usually they don't live together.
And do the acidic soils make it difficult to find remains of wood as well as skeletons, and so evidence of settlements and what happened to them is difficult to assess sometimes?
Yeah, it's really a problem that we don't have much skeletal remains from inland.
So we've got another question on the Q&A which asks about the to what extent was hunting important, and kind of how much animal remains are found in these sites?
Yes, animals were also important for Jomon people, and they hunted wild boar and deer. Wild boar and deer were two very important animal food source for Jomon people, but and wild boar was also symbolically very important. So they sometimes put the face of a boar onto the pottery, or they make wild boar figurines, and so that was probably wild boar have many babies, so that was Jomon people like that. But in northern part, sea animals were also important. So and maybe bear was also important. So there were some regional differeneces.
I've read about bears being important in Ainu, and ethnographically they're kind of bear rituals and stuff like that. Is there any, again, kind of thinking about kind of continuity, is there, what what are the arguments at the moment about the degree of continuity between Jomon and Ainu?
Yes, I think there is a sort of continuity, but how much or in what aspect is very kind of it's not a simple question, and I think both archaeologists and historians looking into that question.
Do any of our panelists have a question, Enrico?
You kind of sort of stole my question about demography, but I sort of wanted to follow up on that, and because I think it's intriguing when you look back to the Okayama demography that you showed, where you see an increase in Western Japan when you have a decline in central Japan, and at the same time you mentioned about the westward expansion of azuki and soybean. So are there other lines of evidence that suggest some sort of a fairly large-scale internal migration happening at the end of Middle Jomon?
Yes, it is very difficult to estimate the number of people, but you can see that the pottery style became very similar all over the Japanese archipelago in the end of the Middle Jomon to the late Jomon period. So it suggests that there were very frequent interactions all through the Japanese archipelago, and also there were the tooth extraction practice, tooth ablation, also introduced from the east to west, and the stone hole to dig the ground, it was also introduced from the east to west. So it was kind of cultural, the whole cultural system was transmitted from the east to the west, and the number of site increases first in the Kinki region in at the end of the Middle Jomon, and then it increased in the Chugoku region in the late Jomon, and then the site increased in Kyushu in the latter half of the Jomon. So there was a sort of wave of increase of sites. So I think it can be a kind of a sign of the population movement. But it took quite it was not a sweeping movement. It didn't occur very quick, but it was a kind of slow wave. So it kind of Eastern Jomon people first settled in Kinki region, and then after a few generations, they decided to move further west, and then so that the process was like that, I think.
It is interesting, and I mean, also what you mentioned earlier, because the other question I wanted to ask you is what do you think was causing this migration, and you already sort of gave an answer to Tom when he asked about possible reasons of the population decline being possibly related to social factors, and I agree with you in the sense that I don't think the environmental explanation holds both in terms of chronology, but also because you don't see this sort of a disaster. But on the other hand, I wonder if there is some sort of a social pressure that sort of leads to a fission of these settlements. Why would that happen at the same time in different places? And so which I don't know the answer. I wonder whether you have any idea why was the tipping point happening approximately at the same time in different places, not across Japan, but at least in central Japan. Do you think there's other factors that we need to consider? I don't know. It's an open question, but
yeah, I think it's a very interesting question. but maybe you can, investigate the problem with kind of simulation, or whether, social factor or climatic factor, which was more, likely to start this, Yeah, currently I don't have any clear answer to the question.
It's the seed of a big project.
I guess in theory, right, you could think there could be, some spread of if there was an ideology, right? If there was or some kind of new ritual or kind of something that led, that caught on and spread, that could potentially lead to that kind of pattern. We've got one last question on the Q&A, and then we'll call it a day. This leads to the final point of your talk, which is there no evidence from burial goods or buildings that suggest higher social status of some individuals, such as chiefs or leaders, or any kind of inequality?
Yes, there is some evidence which shows that not everyone was, equal, because there are, some people have a lot of ornaments, like shell bracelets or, stone earrings, but not everybody have that. And but kind of grave goods are not that common among the Jomon societies. We can see that some people are buried with very rich, ornaments. But so there was a sort of difference. But recently, Takase-san argued about the Hokkaido Jomon society, that there were a sort of, social differences among the Jomon people, but that was mostly based on ritualistic, aspects, and not linked to the economical kind of difference. So we have some differences among ornaments or grave goods, but that level, or we don't have any archaeological evidence that those social status were hereditary. Yeah. So that's the kind of a Jomon kind of social complexity, I think.
Brilliant. Well, thank you very much for a fascinating talk and great questions. Sergey, do you want to come in and say anything?
Well, thanks a lot for the talk. But also, this is the last webinar in this series, and we've been running it for 3 years. So I just want to thank participants for their interest, and Eric Carr for all the behind-the-scene work that he's been doing for over this year and a half. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Enrico, for being a guest panelists here, and thank you for Dr. Matsumoto again.
Thank you very much. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Cheers. Bye-bye.